episode of the Campus Comics Cast, we debate how the Punisher organizes his ammunition. Are the emergency bullets before or after the live ammo? This is Scott Reed, and I'm joined by
Mike Atchison.
And we're going to talk about the first 5 appearances of one, the Punisher, and then after that, we're going to do a little talk about how we sort and organize our comics, so thus the mix mash of on that intro. But Mike, you got anything that you want to talk about before we dive into the first 5 appearances of Frank Castle?
Only that, we talked about this last episode, the passing of Jerry Conway, but we landed on this character for first 5 largely because, just to do it in honor of Mr. Conway. And, it was the time for the Marvel character, and Scott knows quite a bit about this character. I don't. So I look forward to learning something today.
Okay, all right. So, Frank Castle, the Punisher, first appears in Amazing Spider-Man, issue number 129, written by Jerry Conway, art by Ross Andrew, and, of course, costume design by John Romita. That would be Senior, though at the time it was just John Romita. John Romita was kind of called on by Stan Lee after Kirby had left for DC to do a lot of the design work, and that of course gives you your co-creators for the Punisher. So you have Jerry Conway, who probably did most of the heavy lifting, though it was probably based off of a book character, the Executioner, and at this time in the 70s, this is where we're getting into. I think I want to say even like Remo Williams. Do you remember Remo Williams? He was kind of like this adventure guy. There was a movie about him. I want to say that he was also based off of books, but The Executioner was more of a hardcore type of a story. And then, of course, not too long after that, you start getting your Death Wish movies and Dirty Harry and all that stuff in this time frame. Yeah. So I didn't look up the exact times on those, but I assume that had a little bit of influence on Jerry Conway and the design and idea behind the Punisher. Though we have something that's much more toned down because of the comics code.
Yeah, what I found was an interview that Conway gave somewhere along the way that the Punisher was inspired by The Executioner, which was this book series from an author named Don Pendleton, and it was same kind of thing. Vietnam veteran named Mac Bolan becomes a mass murderer of criminals after the mafia-related deaths of his family. So yeah, you could say it was very much an inspiration, if not somewhat of a derivative. So, and he says that he also was inspired a bit by the Shadow, who kind of like took the law into his own hands.
Yeah. Now, the first 5 appearances of the Punisher are Amazing Spider-Man 129, Amazing Spider-Man 134, and 135. Then Giant Size Spider-Man number 4, and then the magazine size Marvel Preview number 2. We had a minor, disturbance or a little bit of excitement when we thought we might have missed one with Marvel Super Action because it came out in late 1975. But I'm still pretty sure that these are the first 5 appearances of the Punisher. And it didn't take long, so this must have been a character that Conway really liked, for him to make his second appearance, because like when we did the Wonder Man story, it's like he had one appearance in 10, and then it was just like brief cameos and just flashbacks for 30, 40 issues. So right. Years later, but within half a year, we have the Punisher returning to comics. So that's probably gives you an indication of what Conway thought about this character, or maybe the fan response to this character at the time of after his first appearance.
Did you read these on the app, or did you have any?
I read these on the app. I probably have 4 out of 5 of these issues. My 129 is slabbed, so
you didn't crack it open for this?
No, I'm not going to crack that open and read just for this episode. So I did read all 5 on the app. I probably, in one of the boxes, might have 134 and 135. I don't think I have Giant Size Spider-Man number 4. I've owned it in the past, but probably in one of the purges, it went away. So, Mike, uh, when were you first introduced to the character of the Punisher?
Well, I'm ashamed to say that I never have read any Punisher stories in comics prior to this preparation. I'd say my first real exposure to or introduction to the character was on the 2016 Netflix TV show Daredevil, and I I think it's hard to reconcile that character. Uh, it was so well done by John. How do you say his last name?
Bernthal.
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 Yeah.
Hmm.
And then what the '70s comics were like. You definitely have to step back and look at the comics through a different set of lenses as what I did. In more current times and on TV. But yeah, I can't. I tried to find. I do have. Oh, like it's Amazing Spider-Man number 162. Why I randomly have that issue of that happens to be like the sixth or seventh appearance of Punisher, but I haven't read it, and I may have just got it for the cover because it's a pretty cool cover with Spider-Man, Punisher, and
Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler. Yeah.
Well, I had to think about this for just a little bit. I want to say that the first time that I read the Punisher, that Mercy Bullets showed up in the story. So I kind of was digging through, and I didn't get to verify this, but apparently the first time the term Mercy Bullets is actually used is in that issue that you mentioned was Amazing Spider-Man 162.
Hmm.
Up until in the issues that we read, he was using real ammunition or ammunition with concussive force or some type of tranquilizer, but the term mercy bullet was never actually ever used. And later on, they're even the mercy bullets are even described as rubber bullets. So I'm pretty certain that it was if it wasn't 162, it was probably 161. Now we had a newsstand or a bookstore in my hometown, and a guy that I knew would drop comics off there, and the lady who ran the shop would sell those comics from. She kept them behind the counter, and you could go in, and he had a 3-ring binder with a handwritten list of what was in the books and how much they were, and then you could look at the binder and find what you wanted, and then she'd pull them out of the back, and then you could buy them. So I assume I was either just buying Spider-Man, found this character, bought those issues because they were in my price range at the time, and then the Punisher is actually the first character that I actively then sought back issues of. So once I discovered the character, I was immediately going back and trying to find previous appearances of the character. So this was like my first, I got my volleyball collection now. I got my Dave Stevens collection, but this was like my first real foray into that, trying to find a character or something and collecting that character specifically. So yes, I'm pretty sure Amazing 162 was like my intro, maybe 161.
So that goes. Your collection bone was developed probably early on in your reading career. You know.
Well, I guess so, yeah, because I would have had to have been. Well, of course, this would have been a back issue, so I probably would have had to have been a, somewhere between 10 and 14. I don't remember how old I was whenever this all started because that
Yeah.
newsstand was open for a while, and I know I was within walking distance of my hometown, so I could just walk downtown. I was in my grandmother worked at a drugstore. Across the street from the drugstore was an old walk-up Dairy Queen, and then right beside the drugstore was the bookstore. So I would go get after school every day, go get money from my grandma to get either a Dairy Queen or a comic book, or sometimes both.
Grandmas are
So
great for that.
that yes, grandmas were awesome for that. So, and
It's
I
it.
don't think she ever said no. So
Oh, of course not. Yeah, my I remember in the days of camping when I was a kid, we'd go down to Eminence, Missouri, and there was a lot of rivers that you would canoe on. We had a campground that we stayed at, and once a week, Grandma would take all of us kids into town, me and my brothers and sisters and cousins, and go to the dairy aisle. It was like a, just a low rent Dairy Queen, but she'd get ice cream for us all. And there was a grocery store in that town that had a comic book rack. So she would let me, as the oldest of the grandkids, go off on my own down the street to the grocery store. So, and it's interesting, not to get too far into the whole collection thing. I'm sure we'll just talk about it more
Oh yeah.
later. But my first interest in collecting wasn't to find appearances of a particular character. It was the completist idea. That the idea of like, oh, I've got to get every issue of Justice League of America. Yeah,
Right.
and then I was old enough
And you've
then to
and you've
order.
regretted that ever since.
No, no, I haven't regretted it, but it is. I'm just acknowledging the fact that yes, I'm a prisoner of my own compulsions to complete, and yeah, that as soon as I was old enough to figure out how to pay for mail order through Mile High, you bet I was
Hmm.
buying some '70s Justice League comics.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right. So, Mike, what are your initial thoughts on the Punisher? Do you have some things that you liked or some things that you disliked? What did you think about this character as Jerry Conway envisioned him?
I think that the first couple of issues were standard fare. There was nothing that you could say is like, oh my gosh, he's going to be a fantastic character. Now he might have been unique in a way that maybe he maybe he was the first antihero in our modern times, but I mean, he even like the second page I think of number 129, he's talking about where he's using the rifle to shoot the like dummy target of Spider-Man. He's talking about being a concussion rifle. So right off the bat, you're not sure, you don't know that he's willing or planning to use lethal force. However, saying that, if this original version of the character is spanning 5 issues, there's a big difference between Amazing 129 and the magazine Marvel Preview number 2. I think a big difference in the way Conway's writing him, and even in the art when you go from Ross Andrew, who's a great superhero artist, uh, to was it Tony DeZuniga that did
Hmm.
that? Yeah, and it's definitely a different tone and a different feel. So it's hard. I have to find like my original thoughts, kind of like meld all of that together. And even though he seemed kind of one dimensional, and he could have been a one-off character right off the bat, but I think as they developed him issue by issue, yeah, they knew they were onto something, and I think they probably got a lot of fan feedback saying they liked this character right away.
Yeah, I think that's probably what was attractive about this character was, well, I guess there were a couple things. I'm sure that a lot of the comic book readers had been also been reading The Executioner, which I have not, so they were probably like Jerry Conway and liked the idea of somebody who was a little bit more, I don't know, gun heavy, I guess,
Yeah.
of a character. I think they also like the idea, and I think this is really what has been the Punisher's um, strongest, like the characteristic that has caused the attraction to the Punisher the most is that the guilty get punished. So you can't escape. You ultimately can't escape justice. The criminal system may fail, but if the criminal system fails, then the Punisher's there to clean up the failures of the law system. Now, of course, fast forward 50 years. It's hard to believe this character's been around for over 50 years.
Right.
But fast forward 50 years, and now it's kind of like it's the law system. You get a lot more of like news about incorrect incarcerations than you do about people who are obviously guilty going free. So the narrative on that has kind of changed, but the character of the Punisher really hasn't changed that dramatic. It's still about the idea about the guilty being punished and the and I think that's just I think that concept is what has made the character so appealing to a lot of people, including myself.
It,
So.
it it appeals to fantasy. I mean, because we have to remember, I come from a law
Hmm.
enforcement background or a criminal justice background, and I know you have to remember that this is fiction and that,
Hmm.
you know, I will tell you um, that I agree that law enforcement has taken steps in glamorizing their power due to the role that they're in by using for their T-shirts or whatever that Punisher skull
Yeah.
symbol to the point where Marvel or they modified it at some point recently, I
Mm,
think, and that I think that's going a little extreme. Stop,
right.
changing the that's not the symbol isn't the problem. The problem is anybody that has that kind of power thinking they can inflict justice
Yes.
outside the confines of our laws, and I'm a stickler with that, and I
Well, that happened. So what you're talking about is kind of relates to two different stories, and I wish I could remember the issue number off the top of my head. But the earlier instance was, and when this all started with law enforcement, some members of law enforcement using the Punisher symbol, and they even, by the way, carried that into Daredevil Born Again, because in the Daredevil Born Again series, there's this anti-vigilante task force, and they kind of sort of use the Punisher skull as
hmm
their logo, so they're kind of carrying that into even the current TV stories. But there is an issue where the Punisher confronts members of law enforcement that are wearing his symbol, and he's telling them, "No, you're not supposed to do that. If you want to look up to somebody, go look up to Captain America. Don't look up to me, and don't use me."
yeah.
So yeah, and then when you were talking about the symbol changing, I I don't feel like that was because of that story. It was a Jason Aaron story on the Punisher, and he basically turned the Punisher skull into more of a. I'm going to describe it as Asian martial arts theme, where it was almost more like basically what happens is the Punisher takes over the hand, and then the hand has like this demonic entity that, depending on who's doing the storytelling, that's kind of in charge of it. So they kind of stylized the Punisher head a little bit more
Oh
for
yeah.
that. So for that particular story, but now in the current stories, he's back to the traditional skull that he had before. So
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at some images here of that. What you're talking about, that it's like a Japanese demon, Oni
hmm
demon. Yeah,
exactly. But it kind of has the look of the Punisher skull, but
yeah,
it's again, it's a little. And I often throw around the word stylized for
yeah.
art that I don't
Pretty
like,
free
but
with
it's
that.
just
Yeah.
as a. It's for somebody who is not an art critic to describe something. I don't know how to describe. So truth's out.
Yep. Me too.
Yeah. So all right. So any other initial thoughts on this character?
No, nothing. Yeah, I think I'm past the initial thoughts.
Okay. All right. So Mike, what do you see about the character's origins here inside of these first five issues?
Well, it's funny. I was typing up my notes before I read Marvel Premiere 2. So my first comment was,
Preview two.
I mean,
Preview
Marvel
two.
Preview. Yeah, I wrote Premiere, didn't I? Nobody can see my notes, so
Yeah.
it's only two letters in difference in that. Okay,
Oh
so
no.
uh, yeah, so I was like, well, nothing. We have no idea really. I don't know that there's any hint at all as to his origin. But then that magazine gave
Uh-huh.
us, I don't want to say a full origin. It's full but basic. It
Yes.
gives you enough to know very much about what his motivations are, and you can understand a lot more. I just wonder if Conway had that origin fully fleshed out. Probably did if he was inspired by that book series
Hmm.
character. So yeah, I mean, we got what we needed, and I'm sure there's been some elaboration over the past 5 decades to give more depth to that.
Oh yeah. Well, it's kind of like the Jack Kirby creation. You just throw out a few basic ideas,
Hmm.
and then it's enough. Lays the groundwork for people to come in and add to it and expand on it.
Yeah,
Down the road. So
yeah,
yeah, only in those first four issues, we only get the hint that something bad has happened. There's not a whole lot more than something happened that made Frank Castle this way. And I guess we should say his actual last name is Castiglione,
Hmm.
and it's just shortened to Frank Castle. But then finally, in issue of Marvel, the Marvel preview issue, we see that it was going out on a picnic, um, walks in on a gangland execution, and then the rest of his family, his wife and two kids, are killed. He manages to survive, and thus his war on crime starts, and that's kind of been the basis of every single story of the Punisher that we've had. So
He's definitely given in these early stories. Andrew gives him a very bad guy look. I mean, he's
mm-hmm.
got the widow's peak,
Yeah.
and the eyebrows that he looks, angry or evil or whatever. He's
Mm-hmm.
everything except for a twirling mustache.
Yeah. And the malicious laugh. He doesn't have the malicious
Yeah,
laugh either. So
right.
I was gonna. Oh gosh, I had a thought and I lost it.
Oh no.
So maybe it'll come back to me. Maybe it'll come back to me later on. So
I hate when it happens.
yeah, I do too. It's just it's just the way it is. When you make the mistake of doing something, stream of consciousness, then you have a tendency to forget things that you want to say. So oh, I don't remember what
There
it
you
was.
go.
So one of the things that I don't know if I had forgotten or if this has kind of been written out of his origin, is I'd forgotten that the Punisher went AWOL, because it talked about, so Frank Castle went AWOL from
Hmm.
the Marine Corps, as opposed to him leaving the Marine Corps and then these events happening to him. This apparently happened when he was on leave at some point, and then he never went back. That's when he started his war on crime, was because of these events. So
Yeah, surely somewhere along the way there's been some
yeah.
the reckoning on that, because I mean the Army just doesn't forget. Our
No,
Marines,
no.
they're going to be like, yeah, I mean you're talking about big prison sentence for just completely
Hmm.
deserting.
Oh
Unless, yeah,
yeah.
unless he has some psychological, which he maybe would, but
That's the argument that you can make at that point, is that
there's got to be,
they're,
there's got to be a story out there somewhere that
oh yeah, yeah.
talks
So,
about this.
well, and at any time a character, uses real world information as part of their origin, so this is a character that is post Vietnam. So at that time, the war that he was fighting in was Vietnam, and we're, well past that. It's like, Captain America.
Yeah, we've
Use
had to
that as another
slide the.
example. Had to slide. How long? When did he come out of the ice? And typically, it was like in modern comics, it's 5 to 10 years ago, whatever that may be. So,
And with
because
Punisher, they had to slide it to what Persian Gulf War, the first one. Maybe now it's going to be the second one.
yeah, who knows? But I guess to keep things, kind of current. Otherwise, you have, you know, obviously this is not in the TV series a 70-year-old man, running around doing
Yes.
all this.
Yep.
So they have to adjust that just a little bit. So. All right, well, not a whole lot to say about Power Set, right? So, what do you want to say about the I don't know how the Punisher works? I guess in comics, what does he do that makes him special?
Well, if one of your main themes is shooting,
Hmm.
then you have to be a master marksman.
Right.
I mean, hand-to-hand combat, martial artist, all that I'm sure comes with it. And of course, if you're also a Marine, even a deserted Marine, that you're going to have all that training that goes with it, and probably a guy like this has some pain tolerance. I'm just guessing. I haven't read enough books to be able to come up with, but he's got to have some level of, just be able to shrug it off and keep going, both psychologically and physically.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, it's kind of funny. I think he's only in these 5 issues. He's only knocked out like once, and heck,
Hmm.
Spider-Man's knocked out like 2 or 3 times.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, but I think you hit. I mean, this is just basically he's not quite the Captain America, perfect, physical specimen. Is kind of where Cap falls on the superpower train. But he's obviously elevated strength, elevated endurance, highly skilled uh, combat in all areas. Obviously, he can. He's a pilot. We see him fly a little chopper at
Yeah.
the in one of the issues. So he has a pretty interesting. Well, I don't interesting. I think I guess kind of it's almost generic. I guess really would actually be a better way to describe it. So I think a lot of the interest in this character is because of his origin and what he does with that origin. I think is really kind of what it boils
Sure.
down to. So
Yeah. And I mean, the Vietnam War when at the time this came out was really, really still fresh.
fresh.
Really fresh. Yeah.
So all right. So how closely, Mike, do you feel that the Punisher matches with what we see in comics today?
I can't say with much authority because all I've done is seen the TV show. I'd venture to say that there's more complexities with the 20 the Punisher today than what you get in this 1974 version. He's an antagonist. Um, simply believes criminals deserve death, and now you get much more. I think I'm trying to remember some of the TV stuff, and a lot of this is assumption too. But I know in this day and age, there's a lot more recognition of what trauma does to one,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, I always go back to Motor Girl. We talk about Motor Girl probably all the time, but I mean, this is a trauma can have a different effect
Yeah.
on people in different effects on people over the
Yeah.
years, and not making excuses, but I'd say that could be one of the biggest drivers, and I bet that moral ambiguity is emphasized these days. But again, I'm just making supposition here.
Yeah, this is one of the areas where you have with writers, they have different takes on how the Punisher is supposed to be portrayed. I I am of the camp that, and this is going to kind of sound weird, but if when the Punisher when the Punishers are Frank Castle's in a room with a bunch of people, in my opinion, he should be the sanest person in the room. Now, he's sane in that he knows what he does and why he does it. Not that he's dealt with the trauma and this is how he is dealing with the trauma. So he knows the type of monster that he is. So I don't view it as him being, you know, having mass psychological problems. It's like this is what he became as a result of the experience that he had. And again, he knows the monster that he is, and
Hmm.
he's perfectly fine with it. Because he wants to, his ultimate goal is to prevent what happened to him from happening to other people.
Sure.
So, and it's kind of always like this keeps popping up on like my Facebook feed, like the whole thing about Batman not killing, right? And then like they'll be below that will be the Punisher. It's like, well, if you kill one killer, then that saves all the lives of all the people who that person would have killed. So um, it's kind of like the whole Joker, Batman, Punisher, how they would deal with that. I wish I could remember the exact meme or whatever, but
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like the argument. It's like why doesn't the Batman kill the Joker? He would have saved how many hundreds or thousands or millions of lives if he would have just done
That is
that.
a dark, dark path to
Mm-hmm.
go down. That is
Yep.
that if you would allow society to, if society started to accept that
Mm-hmm.
behavior,
Oh yeah.
ooh wee,
Yep.
that's man. But yeah, I get it. I just wonder. I'd be interested to read more current Punisher stories to see how other heroes deal with the fact of that they know that he is willing to use lethal force outside of the normal judicial process.
Right. Mm-hmm.
and it just seems like it's just that there's just so many story possibilities with that.
Oh yeah. Well, then a lot of those uh, have been dealt with. Now, one. So I'll just give you an example, and this was leading into the first Punisher limited series. So it's in Spectacular Spider-Man, I think 81, 82, and 83, and it's Spider-Man, Punisher, and Cloak and Dagger. And what you basically get is an unhinged Punisher. So like there's a scene where he's like standing on a rooftop and he sees people jaywalking and he starts shooting them. So now that is obviously not the Punisher that I care for, and I didn't particularly like those issues. And then that is explained away in the Punisher limited series is that he was under some type of basically somebody was I don't remember how they explained it, but somebody was basically giving him mind altering drugs, so
Mm.
that caused that behavior in him because. I don't think that's what anybody wants from the Punisher is him to shoot jaywalkers and litterers and things like that. That's not.
I don't know. I could probably use some corporal punishment on a litterer. That really gets me. If I see somebody
Well,
littering, yeah.
but gunfire. I don't know. That may
No,
be a
I'd
little.
probably no. I
That may be
supposed
a
to say
little
I'd say corporal punishment,
corporal.
like
Okay, yeah,
just
yeah.
take a wiffle ball bat to him or something,
Well,
just a good
he's not
smack.
the paddler. He's the Punisher. So, you know, uh,
The paddler. Oh man, I got a whole vision of that. Yeah, uh,
oh,
yeah, true.
yeah. But then, like I said, that's explained away in the first Punisher series. So again, it's I don't like it when the Punisher is uh, portrayed that way because I just don't think that kind of fits what
Sure.
the character is actually about. So that's just my take on the character.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So what about moments in the first five appearances that you want to call out? I think we've talked about a lot of them already. So is there anything special you wanna mention?
So when we do these first fives, these are the ones. These are the little moments that, as I'm reading on my app, a lot of times, but usually I'm not in front of a computer, so I just put a little note in my phone and then I transcribe it or I email it to myself. So these are as random. It's as random as what they sound. Trust me. So
Okay.
first of all, I'm thinking, man, the I didn't realize when we identified these issues how close they were to a lot of important things going on in Peter Parker's life,
Mm-hmm.
including it was only 8 issues after the death of Gwen Stacy.
Yep.
Uh, you know, Marvel back in these days, 60s and 70s, they really did a great job. It was something I think they followed, other writers followed from Stan Lee, and about weaving subplots into the main story, and it just you could see the continuity from one issue to the next. It was very smooth and interesting because you'd get these Harry Osborn appearances in reference to Norman Osborn, then like Aunt May. I had totally forgotten. I guess I'm just stuck with. I'm rather see Marissa Tomei or even was Sally Field Aunt May and the
Yeah.
yeah. When I seen this Aunt May in issue 134, I'm like, oh my lord, she is really
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know who looks creepier, her or Doctor Octopus, because that wedding dress she had on with the
Mm-hmm.
flyers around the veil, I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. Okay, like I said, I warned you. This is random thoughts, but
That's okay. You're
uh,
allowed.
the Anna Watson. This is more of a question. Is that Mary
Mhm.
Jane's mom? That's
That is. Oh my gosh.
sh-
So
like
Anna
after.
Watson lives next to May Parker. I don't know. Not mother because Mary Jane would just come visit her periodically. So it
Okay,
may also have been an aunt um,
okay.
situation. So
Well, that's the first time I'd seen that character or remembered seeing that character, and that's where in this flashback that Peter Parker was having was after he was talking about
yeah,
what had
Mary
happened with.
Jane's aunt. So
Okay,
yeah.
okay, gotcha. All right, so I figured with the last name of Watson, it almost had to be related somehow.
Hmm.
everybody knows Mary Jane's famous quote about "you really hit the jackpot,
You hit
tiger"
the
or
jackpot
whatever.
tiger, yeah.
But she does say tiger a lot.
Yes.
So they go back to that a lot in her dialogue.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, it's one of those things where, I mean, Conway is the one who killed off Gwen Stacy because he preferred Mary Jane
yeah,
as opposed to Gwen Stacy. So
yeah,
it's not that he was writing it not to necessarily have a highly impactful story, but he just wanted to get rid of Gwen Stacy.
yeah. Well, he accomplished both.
He accomplished both. Yeah, he did. And then, of course, you have in this, Harry Osborn, who this is post drug issues, right?
Hmm.
Which were, probably 3 or 4 years prior to this. Still dealing with all that and dealing with the death of his father and becoming the Green Goblin. There's all kinds of.
Yeah,
It's crazy. And I almost miss this type of storytelling
yeah,
where you've got 4 or 5 plot lines running at the same time through every single issue instead of just like razor focused on one particular thing. It's and I hate to use this term, but it's almost like a soap opera where you have each character and certain things that
sure.
are happening. In a 22 pages, you may only get 10 pages of the Spider-Man story, and then the rest of it's filler setting up things that are going to be happening later on.
I don't think
Over.
that's a negative description. I mean, it's serialized storytelling. They want you to come back the next episode or the next issue.
Uh-huh.
And in another way, I miss stories like this because it you just I don't think see again, this is where I missed out as a kid. I had all these DC comics that my uncle gave me. I never had any Marvel comics. If I'd have been reading this, I'd been like the idea that Spider-Man has to hitch a ride since he's out of webbing. I mean,
Webbing,
that's
yeah.
or that he's reckless enough to leave his costume in a dresser drawer for Harry to
Mhm.
find.
Yeah.
I could see that really happening. It's just I could be like, oh yeah, that would yeah. I just would relate so much, and I could see why it was so popular in those days, especially. So yeah, I was kind of surprised that Punisher didn't even appear in that issue 134 until the very last page. So
Right.
it's
Yep.
barely an appearance. But the
Yeah. Well, it's
next
just
issue he makes up for it.
cameo. You could it's that whole cameo thing. It's a cameo in 134, and
Yeah,
so yeah. But it's just to set up the next story. It's just like,
yeah,
okay, so what changes now and move us into the next one. So now this isn't really anything about the story, but in the Marvel Preview magazine issue 2, there is a scene where the Punisher, he's confronting a guy who was apparently going to be a paid assassin or was a paid assassin, and he steps out of this window. So let's see what page is this on. This is on page 13. It's the lower left panel where he steps out of the window and he ducks. So he's on the fire escape, ducking this bullet that comes through the window that just misses him. And that's you have those things where it's like you see them
hmm,
that just like all the childhood, young teenage years memories just came flooding back just from that particular image.
oh
I
wow,
I don't know what it is. I saw that. And it's like I, I remember this. This is something. So that was just a highlight for me, just seeing. And it's an awesome panel.
it
You
is.
know, but. But yeah, that's it's those moments or those images that kind of ingrain themselves in your brain. Um,
That's
and then
interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
because that does. That's certain images from your childhood. We've read so many comics over the years that obviously not everything is emblazoned in your brain, but certain ones from childhood will be.
hmm and it's amazing how much of this I really, I mean, I knew the Punisher was in it. I knew the Jackal was in the 129. Okay, but how much of it had I actually forgotten?
Hmm.
It's just like, oh yeah. So what else you got? What are some other highlights for you, Mike?
Okay, Tarantula. I didn't even know there was a villain named Tarantula at Marvel. I only knew the DC Tarantula, who was a hero, and uh, no, I mean he. I liked how Spider-Man called him Bugface, but I'm thinking, well, look,
Well,
Spider-Man of all people, you
Mirror.
should know that
Yeah.
spiders are not bugs. You could call him Arachnid Face, but not Bug Face. I noticed in Giant Size Spider-Man #4, it was the first mention of the War Journal.
War Journal. Yep.
Yeah, which is great for that narrative, first-person narration storytelling. It's really not relying completely on dialogue. It's not relying completely on narrative either, but I loved it. I love that. So I can see where that came from.
Yeah, I like that he started it in the 300s so that you know there's some history to the
Oh
character.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. However, it's like I felt like War Journal 3, I don't know, 62, and then it was like 5 minutes later, War Journal 363. It's
Right.
like if he's taking all this time writing, when's he doing anything else? You know,
Right.
it's like what does he have a War Journal for every 5 minutes? I don't know, but then it kind of got spaced out a little bit as the story progressed, so it wasn't quite so. Same day, different War Journal entry.
And this is the first of the issues, this fourth one, that is actually more of a Punisher story than a Spider-Man story,
Right.
which was a nice change.
Hmm.
I liked the question that's asked on page 20. Peter Parker, when he's unmasked, he's like, "Well, you're not Peter Parker. Who is this?" I was like, "Well, yeah. What the heck just happened?" And then it's just some sort of like molding or something, or
Hmm.
and I
In
thought,
his mouth.
if you were to go to 1975 at DC, hell, excuse me, heck, into the 80s even, they were still putting full face mask over Batman's pointy-eared cowl. And this was much more I mean, it was more like uh, what was the character that always did disguises, the Human Target. You
Oh,
know,
okay.
used
Yeah. Yeah.
makeup
Hmm.
and different things, and that made more sense. I'd never seen Peter Parker do that before, but sure. Then the Marvel preview #2. My last thoughts are, it was first mention of Vietnam War, I think, in these stories because it was talking about the origin. Tony DeZuniga is a good choice for this black and white art, this tale like this. And my last thought really I had was, I don't know if it was this particular story in Marvel Preview 2 or just that I was getting used to Punisher's level of violence, but I am now more sympathetic to a situation than in the first few stories. Well, I guess it's because I got the origin, so I'm
Yeah.
at least
Hmm.
more understanding. And it was nice at the end of the story, we were, how if we'd have known where we needed to go to find out where the first 5 appearances were, all you had to do was to go to this issue to the last page, and
Pages.
they have each of those issues on that page. So yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, it's always when you read these stories like how much you miss, editor's notes about, hey, that happened in issue 121 and
Right.
that happened in issue 122 and last issue and what's crazy is like some kid at the grocery store, it's like he doesn't even know where he could find issue 121 at. This
Right.
is really predating a lot of the comic book shops and way before the direct market.
Yes. Yes.
So,
You'd have to rely on Mile
used
High
bookstores,
or
used
used
bookstores or
bookstores.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Or
just
the
to track this stuff down.
what was his name? Robert Bell or that Howard Rogofsky or whatever. Those guys with the classified ads in the comics that sold comic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could get a list from
Hmm.
them for 25 cents. Yep, I did that. I wish I still had those lists.
Oh, yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was like, you know, really, really super outstanding to mention. But Mike, we had to pick a favorite. Which one is your favorite?
Hands down, this last one, this Marvel Preview #2. It's great art. It's the origin story. Punisher being the lead character. It's focused on that. Yeah, it makes me wonder why DC, when they had Tony DeZuniga, they had him like on Jonah Hex or westerns more than any superhero stuff. He was a great artist.
Yeah, as far as the like storytelling goes, the Marvel Preview 2 is just way superior. But I feel like that's more a reflection of the limitations that were placed on the comics because of the comics code as opposed to the magazine, had didn't have to deal with the comics code, so
Yeah.
they could have a more mature storytelling in the magazine than what they could inside of the traditional comic book form factor.
That's
So
true. Yep. But even again, though, like I said at the beginning, what was my takeaway? It's a combination of all these things. These were different types of storytelling in Amazing 129, 134, 135, and in the Giant Size, they were different style, but it was still you could appreciate them for what they were, and it was a
yeah.
very smooth step by step evolution of this character that I thought was impressive, and it made me enjoy the entire experience of seeing him evolve just in 5 comics.
All right. So, do you plan on seeking out any more stories with this character?
Big yes, big yes. I want to. I don't want to be just relying on the TV appearances in the TV show. I want to formulate my own opinions based on, and I'll have to look up or maybe ask you for some key Punisher stories to get and maybe to buy, maybe even original issues of some of those. So yeah.
All right. Well, I'm actually they just started a few months ago a new Punisher series. So anytime Punisher has a monthly, I'm buying it. So this is a character I've got. Now I'm not necessarily caught up on my reading, but I'm looking at my to read pile. There's a bunch of Punisher books over there. The Punisher Red Band series, the new Punisher series that just started. So yeah, I'm 100% in on buying this character, and I kind of buy him monthly. As far as Daredevil stories to read, my all-time favorite
Punisher.
is our series to be Punisher stories to read. It's in Daredevil. That's
Right, right, right.
Daredevil,
Yeah.
sorry. Is Daredevil 182, 183, 184.
Okay.
So this comes right after the death of Elektra in Daredevil. So Daredevil or Elektra dies in 181. So then it immediately goes into a Daredevil Punisher story. Now, it is my understanding that the death of Elektra was actually supposed to happen later, and that the Punisher story was supposed to be told before. So that kind of changes some things around. Um, but it's still my 100% all-time favorite Punisher story. Um, there are some series, and I should have looked these up, but sometimes the Punisher is not the focus of his own book. So there was a Punisher series not too long ago where it's almost told, the story is told through the eyes of somebody who is experiencing what the Punisher's doing, as opposed to told through the eyes of the Punisher himself. I wish I could remember what volume that was or who the writer was, and I don't know if I want to take the time to try to look that up. Um, but that was really good. It's almost like Punisher as a force of nature, as opposed to Punisher as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, much to a lot of people's dismay, some of the Punisher stories that I like the least are the Garth Ennis stories.
Really?
Yeah. Now, one thing I'm going to say about the Garth Ennis stories is that they had some of the best Punisher covers. Those were by Timothy Bradstreet, I think is the cover artist. Um, so the covers are awesome, and the inside story is absurd. Um,
Hmm.
this is like just a couple of instances of some things, and that's why I think it's silly and kind of over the top. Um, we talked about in the pre-orders not too long ago about Junk Punch. Do you remember that comic series?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in one of these, Punisher's up against Wolverine, and guess where he shoots him?
In the junk.
In the junk. Yeah. So like that's Garth Ennis. There's another scene where you've got, and actually this character is kind of important for the current Disney 51-minute Punisher show that's out right now.
Mm-hmm.
One More Kill. You got Mon Nucci and she somehow, spoilers, gets all of her limbs amputated, but yet somehow still manages to jump out of a second story window trying to like kill the Punisher. It's just absurdity. So I'm not a fan of those. So like I tell people, skip the Garth Ennis stuff. It was actually Greg Rucka who did the Punisher series. It's volume 9 of the Punisher, I'm pretty sure. But it's almost like in this series, the Punisher is not. It's like it's told through the eyes of, somebody he rescues.
Okay.
So that's actually, I thought that was a pretty good series as well. Volume 9, written by Greg Rucka. But I would for sure lean into that Daredevil 182, 183,
Well,
184.
unless you have these issues, I've already put it into
Oh,
my cart at my comic shop.
okay. Well, you probably could get them in trade, or you know what you could do, Mike, is you could just read them on the app since you got
I
that.
know, but this is an industry that needs support.
Okay. All right. Okay. I got you. I got you. So.
I was thinking that exact thing whenever I'm looking at some of the prices on these. I don't know if I'll buy it. I just put it in the cart just to remind me for later. So we'll see.
All right. So, any final thoughts on the Punisher? Oh, I mentioned the 51 minute one more kill. It's really good. It kind of has that issue like where we talked about the trauma that the Punisher experiences.
Hmm.
I I was getting concerned as it was going on, but I felt like they righted the ship. I don't want to say too much. I don't want to spoil too many things. They righted the ship as far as how he dealt with the trauma. Um, uh, the first season of the Punisher series I thought was excellent. The second season was okay, but the Daredevil stories, the Netflix series where the Punisher gets introduced, are just outstanding.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then he's been great, and of course we've got apparently rumor is he's going to be in the next Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that actually comes to fruition or not. So final thoughts from you, Mike?
No, I'm happy that it's a character that I'm excited to find some comics to read more about him, and especially some of the good stuff. So
Oh yeah.
appreciate all that advice.
Okay. All right. So we have had a couple of times people suggest that we talk about our comic book organization. Now, I have no idea how long of a discussion this will actually be. So it could take us 30 seconds, or it could take us until we run out of hard drive space on our sound recorder. But Mike, where should we start with organization? So here, okay, so I'm just going to start throwing out some questions, and then we can just we'll just
Okay.
let the discussion flow.
There you go.
But
Let's
I
get
think
going.
I think it's the perfect starting point. So how do you sort as far as publishers go? So what do you do? Are you a pure alphabetical, or do you do some other type of sorting?
I do probably the second most popular way of doing it, and that is by publisher first,
Mm-hmm.
and then alphabetical numerical.
Okay.
And that only goes for though the main two. There for a while, I was trying to sort by publisher for all of those independent companies, and it just was getting. I'm like, I couldn't even remember the name of the book, whatever book, couldn't remember what publisher it would to look under for it necessarily, Aardvark
Uh-huh.
or
Yeah.
some. So I just went for those independents. I just go alphabetical by the title,
Okay.
by the comic.
Okay. So I'm the same way. I'm Marvel, DC, Indie. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how I do
Yep.
my sorting.
Well,
It's like into those three categories.
and you
So
probably have
yeah.
more Marvel than DC, and I have more DC than Marvel. So
Well, okay.
what order? What do you put in the first short box? DC or Marvel?
So I start Marvel. It's Marvel, then
Okay.
DC, then Indies. I'm sure you go DC, Marvel, then
Because
Indie.
I only have
Yeah.
maybe 5 Marvel short boxes, and I have dozens of DC short boxes.
Now, I am definitely more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy, but I don't know that that necessarily means I have more. I probably have more Marvel comics than I do DC comics, but I don't know that for a fact. I've never actually kind of sat down and looked at it to
Hmm.
see. I'm just kind of like swiping through right now, and I got a lot of both. So I
Yeah,
I,
and
I don't know.
you should probably mention that do you have like two different collection storage processes since you have your retail business and you have your personal collection.
I don't even think I want to go into that because it's just a mess. Like, and I've just bought. I mean, I had in December. I bought a collection of about I don't know 4,000 books, and then just last weekend I bought another 2,000 books. I hadn't even gotten through the 4,000 books from before. Now, fortunately, the 4,000 books that I bought were already sorted, so that was
Oh, that's
nice.
good.
But it was like 4 boxes of Marvel and 30 something boxes of DC.
Oh
And I've
my
only made it
gosh.
through the Marvel and like 3 of the DC boxes. So
And the only reason you were able to do it as quick as you have is because you've got a pretty good memory of what has value
you would think
over,
I would, but I forget stuff all the time.
yeah, but still
It's
better
just
than I'd say the average person,
I wish I
You
could
don't have
say
to,
that was true, but
yeah.
I don't know that for a
Well,
fact.
I have to look up almost everything to see
I have to
if
look up a
this,
lot of stuff,
yeah,
and sometimes it's like, oh, this could be something. This could be garbage. This could be something.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
because there are so many times that I've thought I was nearly ready to put a book in a dollar box, and to find out that it was a $50 book. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm glad I checked this one. And if
sure,
that happens to you enough, you start to doubt yourself,
sure.
and then you keep you keep wanting to check all these little piddly books just in case something crazy happens. Okay, so we've decided publishers, Marvel, DC, Indies. How do you handle the DC Marvel crossover or the Batman Grendel book when it goes into your collection? Where does that get sorted in at, Mike?
They go into a particular purgatory of between. I have all of these DC boxes, and then before, I mean, right after, say, Why the Last Man, or whatever the last. No, it would be like a Zatanna or something, or
Mm-hmm.
0 Hour, the last comic in that DC box. It goes crossovers go there before I start Marvel because they are literally melding together. They are touching one another.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed logical at the time. I don't know
Uh-huh.
that I actually thought of that through, at any point, but I hadn't even thought about it now. I mean, I'm just like that's what I do. I don't know
There
why,
you
but it
go.
make that seems to be where if I'm like because that's the idea of sorting other than the gratification of, going through the process of doing that bagging and boarding and sorting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
being able to go find what you have is hugely important. So you want to do what makes the most sense to you.
So since I'm a Marvel DC indie guy, if it's a Marvel DC crossover or a Marvel indie crossover, they go in my Marvel. If it's a DC crossing over with anything but Marvel, then it goes in with my DC books. And then, of course, indie crossovers just stay in indie. So, like, Batman Spawn goes in DC. But I don't have this. But if I had if I had the Batman Deadpool book,
Hmm.
it would be in Marvel.
Yeah.
Just because now, thinking about it, it's like I really should be thinking about it in terms of and unfortunately you can't do this all the time, but it's like which character's name comes first.
True.
So like if it was Batman Spawn, then it should go in DC. If it was Spawn Batman, then it should go in Indies. But that's not how I do it. I just put it in. I put it in the preferred publisher. That's not really the right way, but the in
The,
my
the most
mind the higher ranked publisher.
Sure, the most
So
prevalent or the most,
yes,
yeah, right.
yeah.
Okay.
So that's how I handle like all of the crossovers
I think I
amongst
have that. If
myself.
it's if it's like a DC independent, that's where I have my Batman Spawn is somewhere in the Batman's, you know,
Hmm
you could get into some more. Well, I'll let you ask the question. So,
Oh no, you could no, you go ahead. This is free flowing. We're just talking.
so with
I just put down some stuff so we wouldn't have any dry, lack of conversation
oh
points.
yeah,
So,
well, okay, I remember years ago you asked me how I sort comics or titles that change their names mid series or throughout
yes.
the series, and it I was not prepared, and whatever I said, I'm not even sure if it was accurate. I don't, because I got to thinking I've done it different for different titles.
Hmm.
So, okay, for instance, you have Superboy. First, it was Superboy. Then it was Superboy featuring or starring the Legion of
Hmm.
Superheroes. Then it was Superboy
Legion.
and
Oh,
this.
and
Yeah.
right.
Then it was just. Then it went when Superboy left. It was just the Legion of
Legion.
Superheroes.
Hmm.
In that case, I put everything. I kept it. If it was in the never changed the numbering, I kept it all in numerical
Hmm.
order.
Hmm.
Now, in the case of say all of the like Justice League. Well, I did the same with like the JLI because it changed titles like three or four times. It
Yeah.
went from Justice League to Justice League International to Justice League America, and
Hmm.
then you went from Europe went to Justice League International at some point,
Hmm.
and you had all. So in those points, I again stay within the series, and then when you get multiple volumes. I just got to where I just put everything, whatever happened in, because I've got lots of Justice League comics and all of their incarnations and iterations. I just try to go in the year that it came out. You know, what came in chronological order, publishing order, because that's the only way I could keep track of. Well, I know that Justice League Elite happened around this year, and I go back and try to, because if I go alphabetical, I feel like it doesn't tell the story in my brain right. Anyway, so yeah, that's what do you do? What do you do for your series?
Okay, so I'm like you. I try to, if the series things like the example I always use is West Coast Avengers. West Coast Avengers started with a 4 issue limited series. Then it went to its ongoing series, and then at some point in that series, they changed the name from West Coast Avengers to Avengers West Coast.
Yeah,
And they did that because they wanted it side by side with Avengers on the
on the
sales
racks. Uh
racks,
huh.
right? But my gut says leave it at West Coast Avengers. So keep it because it keeps the numbering, for that, second volume of the series. But um, but gosh, when you look at the indicia,
Yeah,
right, and it says Avengers West Coast, and then when you start using software that kind of helps you
yeah,
track that stuff, then that of course is going to be the ordering is going to be different in the software than what is going to be inside of your personal system. Now, fortunately for me, there aren't a lot because I'm not the completist anymore. There are very few series that I felt like I need to be completist on, and fortunately, none of those series have had a dramatic name change halfway through the series I've had to deal with like you have with Justice League
hmm
because like I'm not a huge. I mean, I don't, I've read a lot of West Coast Avengers. I don't need to own all the West Coast Avengers series,
yeah,
but that does present a little bit of a conundrum. But for the most part, you know, if it's the same series, then that's kind of where it goes. So I try to keep it together. Now I know like one thing that always bugs me, and I understand why shops do this because they're trying to sell comic books, right?
hmm
Is they do it by character as opposed to by title. So, and this is something that Mike used to do at Campus Comics slash Money Monster, is like Spider-Man. This is the
hmm
best example. So, Amazing Spider-Man would not be in the A's. Amazing Spider-Man would be in the S's because you would have all the Amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, Adjectiveless Spider-Man, all would be in Spider-Man, and that always drove me crazy.
yeah. I don't know that. I mean, and even because
Yeah.
even within that one area of Spider-Man, you would want
Mm-hmm.
to separate titles
Mm-hmm.
for buyers, for purchasers.
Yes.
You'd
Yeah.
want to. I don't want to find a spectacular in the middle of the amazing. I don't want to find.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, okay, so you saying that makes me think of almost like if my collection was just laid out at a shop for sale. I think the way I do my war books, like how our Army at War changed to
Mm-hmm.
Sergeant Rock. I did not.
Yeah.
They kept the same numbering, but I changed. I do separate them by
Mm-hmm.
because it seems more. It just
Yeah.
makes more sense in that
Now
example.
this is something. Now I used to be a purist at at shows where I would have. I would do Marvel, DC, Indie, and then everything Marvel would be alphabetized. Everything DC would be alphabetized. Everything independent would be alphabetized. But then, if you go to enough shows and you'll have people ask, "Do you got any war books?" And it's like, or horror books. Like, okay, well,
Yeah,
I
you're
got House of Mystery and House of Secrets over
pointing
here
in
in
17
DC.
different
I
directions. Yeah.
got some, yeah. There's some strange tales or supernatural thrillers over here in Marvel. So I have, for purposes of selling, started pulling out some of the genres. So like I have a group of westerns, I have a group for war, jungle fantasy, sci-fi horror. I even pull out like movie TV stuff now into
Mm-hmm.
a separate, and then some of the larger runs like Star Wars, Spawn, they get their own complete section. Even whenever I had, which I don't have them anymore, I had the two complete runs of Invincible. I made a separate section for Invincible just because that's something that people would come specifically asking for, and then I could point them right to it instead of saying, "Well, they're somewhere in the indies." Right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
here's my Invincible section, here's my Star Wars section, here's my Spawn section, here's the
Yeah.
horror section. Now, I do not do that in my personal collection, with a couple of small exceptions, which we can talk about later.
Okay.
So, all right. So, how do you? Okay. So, I'm trying to figure out which of these questions to ask
Let me
first.
let me follow up on the genre
Okay.
real quick
Go ahead.
because about a year ago I did start. I didn't really start it for sorting purposes, but I got on a kick of reading. I wanted to read all of the 70s and 80s non-superhero titles that I had in my collection. Stuff that I'd never read, or if I had, it been decades ago. And everything from Rima the Jungle Girl to Spanner's Galaxy to whatever. So I ended up separating all of them into a couple of short boxes so that I could read them all without having to, I just did it all while I was on this kick. Whether I leave it that way or not, I don't know. I mean, I changed my mind so many times I can't even decide whether to put, say first issue special under the numbers at the very front, before the letters, or should I
Yep.
put it in with the F's?
F's.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, so but I right now I've got all the numbers at the very front, in front of
Yeah.
all the letters, the first A's. Yeah,
So now I think I have first issue special in the F's whenever I
yeah,
sort it. So,
yeah.
well, okay. So that brings me to now. Right now, I do have some boxes that are set up differently. So I'll just talk like, okay, so the volleyball and the Dave Stevens, those are
Yeah,
separate.
yeah.
And I even have some issues that I have in my Dave Stevens box that have nothing to do with Dave Stevens. So, for example, Dave Stevens did one cover on a series called Bad Planet.
Hmm.
He did issue number 6. Well, I don't want to put issues 1 through 5 in with the indies, because then it's like, why are they there separate? It's like, why do I even have these issues? Well, I have them because Dave Stevens did issue number 6.
Sure.
So those issues are actually in the Dave Stevens box, even though Dave Stevens has nothing to do with it. Also, like with the volleyball issues, I have the volleyball issues in a separate box, because then whenever I have a save search on eBay for volleyball covers, and sometimes I think I have that, and CLZ doesn't say that I have that, but I thought I had that, so I can go fairly quickly and find those and see which ones I do or don't actually have. So some of the specialty collections I keep in a separate box, not part of the regular selection.
That makes perfect
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, and like I'm sitting there looking underneath, I got this counter in my room, and I got one box that's labeled Power Pack, and I got one box that's labeled Micronauts. Actually, I take that back. I got two boxes that are labeled Micronauts. I got a couple of ROM boxes. I got a couple of Silver Surfer boxes. So they're actually pulled out separate
Hmm.
from the rest of the collection.
Well, I before I started packing for this move, I had homage covers or something I collect. Not every single
Uh-huh.
one, but I do. If I know, especially if it's something from the old days, like a something by Murphy Anderson that he put in a Justice League cover, but was actually the same cover with different characters was on an old Mystery in Space. I put those up for display. I put them in my comic book closet on the shelves where I put them next to one another.
Mm-hmm.
So since I've packed, I put all those together in a short box. Same way with my Gulliver's Travels type stories.
Right. Okay.
Uh, Bursting through the cover.
Mm-hmm.
That's another one I do. I haven't done it with like the crossovers because those seem to be. I just mark them with a label, which is something else I haven't talked about. Is I have a labeler that I put on to help me remember what's unique about this comic.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not obvious already, I'll put at the
Okay.
bottom unofficial crossover Clark or Thor in a
Okay.
DC comic or
There you
Clark
go.
Kent
Okay.
in a Thor comic or something. Yeah.
Okay. So how would you? This kind of goes back to the changing titles. So how do you handle it when a comic book changes publishers? So probably the best example of this would be something like Wildcats that started at Image
Hmm.
and then it goes to DC, right? Because when Jim Lee comes to DC, he brings Wildcats with him.
Hmm.
So you probably don't own any Image Wildcats, but
I do.
do you
I've got
have
a
it?
Jim Lee
Oh,
signed copy. Yeah.
ooh, okay, all
Yeah.
right. So how do you handle it when a comic switches publishers?
I have always gone with because I was mostly DC. If it was, I started collecting or finding an old quality comic, but I knew
Mm-hmm.
DC owned them now, or an old faucet, and I knew DC owned them. I consider them with whoever the current owner of that character
Okay,
is where I put it. Now I don't know. I mean, say Conan's a little different because he's been not just at Marvel but at a lot of
a
independents
lot of
too.
other, yeah.
But for the most part, I almost maybe completely, I'd say, just whoever the current license holder is for that character.
Ah, okay, all right. So yeah, for me, like the Wildcats that are DC go with DC, and the Wildcats that are Image would stay over at Image. So
Oh,
I
okay.
wouldn't pull Image into DC
Yeah,
myself.
I
But
see.
okay, so now what about Vertigo, or on the Marvel side, Epic? Do you put Vertigo with DC, or do you put Vertigo outside of DC?
Right in mixed in with DC.
Me too. So like Vertigo is so this was a joke I had with Mike No again at Campus Comics. Um, I was, it was mainly Dan Brown who did most of the sorting, but I would go in every once in a while and
In the
help
back
Mike,
room. Oh
in the
yeah,
back room
yeah. Me
sort
too.
comics, right? So okay, and you as well. So
Hmm.
um, so Mike wanted them with the Vertigo separated, and he says, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Well, I said, Mike, you can do it however you want to. You're doing it wrong, but you can do it however you want to." Because I just felt like the Vertigo should go with the DC, because then it's
Yeah,
like somebody wants Swamp Thing. Well, Swamp Thing's a DC character, and
yeah,
a large portion of his life he lived at Vertigo. I don't want
yeah.
the Swamp Things over in in Vertigo separated out, because then you have the DC Swamp Thing and the Vertigo Swamp Thing.
Absolutely. Now,
So
Epic was a magazine, so you'd have to separate that somehow, wouldn't it?
no. So
No.
Epic was an imprint at Marvel that had, so you had things like
Oh,
Sisterhood of Steel and Dreadstar and those. So Epic Illustrated was the magazine,
okay. That's what I'm thinking of.
and then
Yeah.
Epic was the imprint. And of course, Marvel and DC have had other imprints as well. I mean, you had like the Impact imprint at DC.
Max
Um,
or
uh, yeah, like
uh,
there's all different types of imprints.
yeah.
So the imprints. as long as I remember that they belong to one of the bigger publishers, go in with the larger publisher. But really, the big one is Vertigo and then Epic for Marvel.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
now I don't think you have a ton of graded books, but do you do anything graded with different with your graded books?
I have them in a separate box that fits them. Yeah, I've got a
Yeah.
box that's not quite full of graded books. I've never had a currently owned book sent off for grading, even though I've talked to you about it a dozen times, I'm sure. But I have found them that I'm like, well, this is the only way I'm probably going to get this book. I'm going to go ahead and get it grade or get the graded copy, and I have them in a separate. And the same way with Golden Age. If it's a different size, I can't fit these Golden Age books in a typical short box. So I have
Right.
separate boxes and I have quite a few Golden Age comics. So yeah, so there maybe have 4 or 5 short boxes of them. Yeah.
Well, my first graded book, I went and saw Stan Lee at St. Louis. I said, I'm gonna get this book graded. I get his signature. I want to have verification that the signature is legit, and this will probably be my only graded book ever.
Hmm.
And then I had a chance to meet Jim Steranko, so it was like the same thing. And the next thing you know, I have these nice comic cubes, these wooden drawer units for a lot of my comics. So I ended up with 2 of the drawer units that were for size for graded comics. I said, okay. At that point, I'd already gotten quite a few more graded books, so I went from 1 to having a bunch.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, I'll just limit it to these 2 comic cubes and 3 BCW graded comic book boxes on top of that, and then plus all the stuff that's just spread out over the house. And now I have way more graded comic books than I ever intended to have. Um, but I actually keep those sorted just alphabetical.
Me
I don't
too.
even break those up by publisher. So
Same
those are
here.
just
Yep.
because it's only how many graded books do I have? I don't even know. And this is just the graded ones that I consider mine,
Hmm.
not not the
Not for sale or
ones.
retail. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm over 110 graded books now, and like I said, that doesn't even include a lot of the ones I have for sale that are
Yeah.
just kind of laying around. So
What do you do with your treasuries, or do you have enough to even box
I
them
do not
separately?
collect treasuries. I refuse to collect treasuries.
I kind of
I
knew the answer to
hate
that.
them.
I just
I hate them.
well,
I
I
hate
hated
them
the
forever.
idea. I hated the idea of keeping them for a long time, but I have bought you can get treasury size boxes now,
Hmm.
and I have a couple of them. Yeah, I've got 2 of them, one for Marvel, one for DC, and I've got almost all the DC except for a couple hard to get Rudolphs. I'm not going to pay
Okay.
$50 for a Rudolph treasury, and I probably have 2/3 or half of the Marvels.
Wow.
So I do, yeah, that's something I'll probably unload most of them at some point. Like you've sold some to me as well. Um,
Yeah, I have like 5 or 6 right now, and I hate them because they just don't.
you
If you
don't know
don't have
where
a
to,
treasury
yeah,
size box, you don't know where to put them.
yeah.
So they go sideways in like a magazine box, along with a bunch of other hardcover books that I just randomly accumulated.
Now I notice in your background you have some drawer boxes, and you also have it looks like file cabinets.
Okay, so the white drawer boxes. All right, those are books that are up for sale on eBay or in the process of going up on eBay.
And those are the
Is what's
official
in
drawer
these.
boxes from.
These are the official drawer boxes from the Collection
So that's an
Drawer Company.
unpaid sponsored plug there.
Yeah, I have. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 20 right there.
Yeah,
Now, what you don't see are the 18 over in this corner.
yeah.
That is also stuff that's posted up on eBay.
Oh my gosh.
I think it's 18. I got one row of Marvel, one row of DC, one row of independent stuff over there, plus stuff sitting on top of it. So, but that I don't. Now I have some non-collection drawer boxes that were given to me as a Christmas gift by my kids. So of course I have to use them.
Hmm.
So that is where the Micronauts and Silver Surfer and ROM and those books is is over here underneath. I got this kind of like this shelf, not really a shelf. It's almost like a table built into the wall. Here, they're underneath there to keep them out separated.
Okay.
Now these here,
Those
these are the
wooden.
wooden comic cubes.
Oh.
Okay, so these were actually handcrafted. I learned about these on Comic Geek Speak by Deemer's brother, who does the
Oh, right.
woodworking.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
these are actually. I bought some of them. My wonderful wife got me some of them for Christmas. I've got one, two. I've got for um, 10 for regular size current silver golden age books, and then two of the graded size, and then in between I have some BCW boxes that are actually full of graded books as well. It's like I know you can't see them because of the way the camera is, but like I just every
Those are
once in a while will
great. Yeah.
rotate out the graded books. Then I put like I got my Captain America statue and my Rocketeer statue
Yeah.
over here as well. They're on top of those. All right, so how about um, zero and minus issues? Where do they go?
I had not prepared for that either, but they go not in chronological order, or publishing year, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I put them at numerical, so they go in
I
front
do
of
as well.
one. Yeah.
They go at the front. So
I can't
which
remember.
sometimes really irks me because like you get a really nice number one issue and then you put this garbage number zero in front of the really nice number one and it's like
Right, right. Yeah.
yeah, I hate the zero issues and the negative one issues
Or
and the
even the
number jumping issues. Blah.
oh,
Yeah,
right, yeah,
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 like the Deadpool. What was it? Deadpool 1000 or whatever it was. You
yeah.
know that.
Oh, that's a
that
good point too. Those legacy numbering things. I mean,
I have that on my list.
okay, well,
So
I'll let you get to it because
well,
I'm.
actually, it's
I,
then annuals. What about annuals?
oh, annuals go at the end of the run,
Okay, all
not
right.
in the year. Not like
Not
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Chronological. So okay, the same. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
mine zeros one negative ones go in front, annuals go in back. Okay, so here's the big one. Numbering restarts. Okay, so I know you have pre New 52 Batman, New 52 Batman, post or let's see what would be Rebirth Batman, and maybe Detective would be a better. Let's go Detective. Let's go
Okay.
Detective with this. No, that's not a good example either. Let's go. Hmm. Oh, I will just stay with Batman. So Batman, New 52 Batman, Rebirth Batman, and they've gone back to. No, they haven't gone back to well, they
They're
keep
in the
renumbering
hundreds.
Batman.
Yeah.
Well, no, they're back to number one because
Oh, they
of
just
the
recently.
fraction.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
fraction
So it's
run.
like maybe the
So
fourth volume or something, or
yeah.
yeah.
So how do you? I don't know. Maybe detective or action would be a better choice. But okay. So how do you handle? Let's talk about Batman first, and let's go to detective. So Batman. How do you sort those Batman issues?
I mean, going with volume, I go by volume. I unless it's like a subtitled something that's going to be limited run, I go by the volume number. So I have the volume one of Batman all the way to whatever issue it ended before New 52, which I don't have many from the 2000s. I got rid of a lot of those, but then I start. Then I'll start the New 52 Batman if I have any of those, and then the Rebirth in
Mm-hmm.
2016. But I keep them together by volume.
By volume. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I do. But what about when they go back to the original numbering?
Well, then I just keep it with that last volume. I
Okay.
just
So
yeah.
detective. So detective. Then you have volume one of Detective Comics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now of course, it then went to something happened because they didn't renumber Detective, did they? With New 52? Or did they?
No, no, no.
No.
Yeah, Detective did not renumber. Only Action and Batman did.
Okay. Um,
So Detective, I'm looking at my. There should be. Oh no,
but
there's more than one volume of
yeah,
Detective. Yeah,
there's more than one volume of Detective.
yeah.
Yeah. So
I've got up to 853 that issue, and then
okay.
volume two. Okay, so
Because they no, they did redo. Detective because we had the second Detective issue number 27 as part of New 52. So, do you keep those detectives between the first volume and then where they go back to the original, or do you have them after?
I think after.
Okay.
After. I must not have kept that volume 2, and really volume 3 is just
Is
when they go 1,000 on after that.
Well, actually,
So,
it's 934
oh, is
or
it?
something
Okay,
like
so
that.
I must have started. I must have got rid of everything except for 1,000 on.
Yeah, because they basically were getting to the point where they could start doing the countdown to 1,000.
Right,
With
right.
Detective. So same way that they did with the same way they did with the action. So but
Yeah.
yeah, Detective did start renumbering. That's why we got the second Detective 27. And then after the 52 issues of that, then I guess they went back to the original numbering. Now I think in CLZ and Key Collector they do list that second group of renumbers, so the 930 or whatever it started at back up at,
Yeah.
as volume 3, even though it's using the volume 1 numbering. so so again, how do you handle those?
I just those I just kind of stick with no matter what the number. I'm just going in whatever when they came out. I
Yeah,
just
I
have to.
try. Yeah, and it is so, like Spider-Man. It's not too bad with Detective,
Yeah.
but like Amazing Spider-Man,
Oh
because
wow.
they've gone to the I wish that anytime they did the renumbering that they would keep the legacy numbering
On the
on the
cover.
comics. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I greatly appreciate that, because I
Adventure
prefer.
Adventure Comics did that
Okay,
around.
and now periodically they do that with on Marvel, and sometimes they don't, sometimes they
Hmm.
do. So okay, let's see what else. I don't. That was kind of like my uh, little notes that I had of things to talk about and ask. I don't know what. I guess do you consider your comic sorting and bagging and boarding to be therapeutic, or do you consider it to be tedious? Tedious.
It's a bit tedious, but I am very compulsive or obsessive about it. I cannot. You have bought a lot of comics from me, and even though I did put 2 comics in a bag for a
Oh,
long
I hate
time,
that so much. I hate that so
I
much.
stopped that even before you started complaining. But I never have left a comic unless it was just a ragtag Richie Rich or something unbagged and boarded. And I always anything I've sold you has been I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure pretty much everything's been bagged and boarded. Um, but on that note, have you ever gone through for your personal collection decided, you know what, it's been decades since I've put new bags and boards with these comics?
Well, my personal collection is all in my lights.
Oh,
So I don't put them in the polypropylene or whatever that is. They're in my lights.
so they'll
Anything that I'm
last longer.
So those are archival. You're supposed to be able those theoretically will be fine
Hmm.
to whoever inherits those from me.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'd
so
like to maybe get to that point, especially I don't want to do it and then downsize. I need to
yeah.
downsize and then do it
Well,
or
and
separate
that can
out, you know.
yeah. Well, that's what you can do. Is like for me, it's like okay, is this going into my personal collection? Then it goes into a my light. Now I have
Yeah.
a few books that I just haven't made it to yet to get them into the my lights, but they are separated out. Now, if I am like, since I buy a lot of stuff just to sell, right? Um, I would typically just leave that stuff that I'm trying to sell in the book that it was in or in the bag and board that it was in,
Hmm.
unless it's just you get those where they just are so tacky
Oh yeah,
on the
and
outside
the
from
ink is
that
starting to
plastic.
transfer, yeah, onto the
Mm-hmm.
board. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
I've
So
bought comics from stores, and I'm like, oh, I got to change this bag
oh
and
yeah,
board
this
right
has
away.
got to, or this has got to go. So
Yeah.
yeah, so if something is obviously got a problem, then I will swap it out.
Okay,
But like I said, my personal is in my lights. So
here's like one of the most important questions I can think of, and I'm being kind of
okay,
facetious about this.
okay.
You tape your flap down. Do
Hmm.
you one piece of tape or two? or do you do the self-adhesive for your personal
Okay.
collection?
For my personal collection,
Hmm.
all right, I do. I'm not a fan of the self adhesives
Neither am I.
because there you can't when you don't want the adhesive there, you can't make it go away.
Right.
Right. So I have seen too many comics damaged
Yep.
by self adhesive bags. People forget that the adhesive's on the back. They set something down on top of the adhesive, and boom, they just ruined the book.
Ah.
Um,
And it's
yeah.
not like that non-stick tape or whatever you call it that you can peel.
Hmm.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Now, I so I'm a Scotch tape guy. When I was first doing it, especially with the My Lights, the problem that I realize is that the Scotch tape, when you can't really peel that off of the My Lights very easily.
Oh.
Most of the time, you're going to tear the Scotch tape.
Yeah.
So what I have been doing, if I open up a book that's in my personal collection or put something in my personal collection, now I'm doing the thing where it's still Scotch tape. You know how they make the little pull tabs like with masking tape? When like you ship something, you fold the masking tape over itself so you have a little spot to pull it
Yep.
open.
Yep.
Okay, I do that with the Scotch tape now, and then I do two pieces on the backs of the bags,
Oh.
so that way I have a little tab, so I can pull that up and stick it to the front of the book. So when I slide the book out,
Yeah.
it's less likely that the tape is ever going to come in contact with the cover or any part of the comic.
So I had those My Lights. Do you use the thinner ones or is it 3 millimeter?
I use the Mylite 2s,
The My
so
Light
they're the
2s.
2 millimeters.
2 millimeter.
The
Okay.
4s are very, very thick.
Right. Right.
And
I've got a couple of
especially,
them. Yeah.
yeah,
They're so
especially
hard
the
to
flaps
flap over. Yeah.
flap over, and they'll even when you tape them, they will sometimes because they want to go back, they will pull the tape off
Yeah.
of the back of the book.
Yeah.
So I use the Mylite 2s and the full back boards is what I actually
Do you have any
use
top
for my
loaders in
personal.
your collection?
I do not. I have a bunch of top loaders that I have gotten as part of other collections. For the most part, for now I've just been sticking them in a pile. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with them.
Yeah, I've got some of my older books that they're usually the bigger books that the top loaders are for. So I just have never gone to the trouble of swapping them out. They seem to be okay the way they are. Um, yeah,
So now, when you talk about the top loaders, are you talking about the hard plastic top loaders, or are you talking about the Mylars that have the open top?
they're kind of like flexible. I guess
Okay,
they're Mylar then. They're not hard
okay.
plastic. They're
They're
flexible,
are
but
they
they have the open top.
okay? Yeah. So I've never been a fan of those, and to
Yeah,
me, it's been because like you can't close them. So I feel like air is coming in contact with the top of the book,
sure.
and therefore you're going to get discoloration at the top. So I've always preferred something with a flap so that you didn't have that particular
But
issue.
actually,
I never.
everything I have in a top loader is also in a bag and board.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
So yeah, because it's the polypropylene though that you have to worry about degrading over time, and those are
right.
I've even heard you're supposed to swap out every 5 years.
Yeah, I've got
Now
yeah.
I definitely am not doing that. But the My Lights, so that's part of the reason why I do the My Lights is that I technically don't have to worry about that because
Yeah.
they should be good for a long time.
I've got a whole short box with just bags and boards in the order of, what size and the type.
Uh-huh.
There are some backboards that I've found that are thicker.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a little bit extra, if it's a
Yep.
little bit, it's not something you want to get slabbed or graded
Mm-hmm.
or put into a hard case, but it is something you definitely don't want to let get bent. I've put the
Yes.
extra thick backboards with a better bag.
So that's why I use the full backboards. They also make half backboards, which are half the thickness on the back
Oh,
with the My Light 2s. So they're archival backing boards that go inside of the My Lights. Otherwise, you don't want to put a regular, comic board inside of a My Light. You want to use an archival board as well.
right.
So, and that's why those are expensive. Like it
Yeah.
cost me about 50 cents for every single one of those that I have a
Yeah.
bag and board on. That's a little high. Maybe it's more like 30 or 40 cents versus
Yeah.
the 10 cents for a regular bag and board. Of course, I
Yeah.
guess prices have gone up dramatically here lately, but
I don't know that I answered you when you asked, is it more of a therapeutic
oh,
or
mhm,
more of a chore?
yeah,
And I would say it's more of a chore whenever I'm bagging and boarding new books.
Oh
But
yeah.
if it's me rebagging and boarding and looking at my collection that I haven't looked at these books in a while, that's therapeutic. That I can
I
consider fun.
For me, it's like, well, of course, most of the bagging and boarding I do now is for collections that I get in. So I'm going through the collection. Um, for me, it gives me a chance to TV series that I want to watch, but I don't feel like I don't have to pay close attention to. It gives me a chance to have those on, so I've got a spot where I can be watching the TV and doing the bag and the boarding at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. So like when I watch TV series like Invincible or The Boys, that it's like I
Mm-hmm.
want to say that I watch them, but I don't want to invest all the time like I do in like Daredevil Born Again or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's whenever I try to do a lot of bagging and boarding. So it's can be therapeutic as long as it's going smoothly. Sometimes you get these, the boards or the bags are slightly miscut, and then it becomes problematic getting the bags and the boards in, and it can become tedious there. But for the most part, I consider it therapeutic. Okay, um, what size bags do you use for your new books? Do you use current bags or silver bags?
I use. I'd rather go by. I think it's seven and an eighth width. I'd rather go by the measurements because there's been, depending on the company I've bought for, if it's the
Mm-hmm.
polyurethane or whatever you call it.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some supposedly they should fit into a Silver Age book should fit into it, but it doesn't.
Okay.
So I think I get the 7 1/4 wide. Would that be
Okay.
right?
I'd have to look. Um, so I never use current age bags
No, I
ever,
use
even for current.
yeah,
Well, I take that back. For my Light 2 ones, I do use current on like ROM and Micronauts and those titles.
yeah.
For stuff that I'm selling, I always use for current and silver. I use Silver Age bags, and then for my higher end stuff, the my lights that I use are they make a silver gold bag that'll fit both.
Okay.
So, um, so that's and that the Silver Age thing came from Dennis McCord, Campus Comics,
Yeah.
because all of his
Told me
books
that's where I got it too. Yep.
he always bagged in
Yep.
Silver Age bags. Even
Yeah.
the new stuff he would bag in Silver Age, because I don't know why, but if I buy a bag, if I've bought bags, I am more apt to get miscut bags in a current set of 100 than I
Mm-hmm.
am in the silvers. And I don't know why that is, but I don't know how many current size bags that were like cut in half.
Oh
You
wow.
know, yeah, it's just it's crazy. So that happened
Okay.
to me a lot. So like, that doesn't hardly happen with silver for some reason. So
Well, yeah, I almost always get the silver. I don't remember the last time I got current because you want the board to cover the entire back of the comic,
hmm
but you want to fit in a bag. So
yep.
but there's some variation that I cannot think of that I always ask my shop up in St. Louis. I asked Dave Schmidt up there, okay, what is it I always think I need to get for, what
Yeah.
it's because it's not the board. It's a little bit it's just the
Yeah.
way it's labeled or marketed
Yeah.
is it might be a regular size board and they're putting inside a silver bag or something, but
So like when you get those 100 pagers,
mhm,
that's probably the best example. If I were to get a 100 page current book, that would probably go. It would still go on a silver board, but it might have to go into a golden age bag
because of the
because of the
thickness.
extra thickness on
Yep.
the book.
Yep.
Yeah, so I run into that pretty frequently. So I always keep golden age bags and magazine bags around. Um, the silver age boards and bags I order by the thousand.
Yeah.
um, and sometimes I've ordered like I've actually at a single time a couple of times now I've ordered 10,000
Oh my
at a
gosh.
time. Yeah. So that's always fun whenever those orders come in. They come in on a pallet.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So there's that. But
Now
all right. Well, you got anything else? Comic sorting. Man, that went a little wild.
I know. Let me quickly a couple things. We talked about how you got your boxes. I've always
Oh
had.
yeah.
I had long boxes for a long, long time, and
hmm
around 2015, during a remodel and I had to move all my long boxes upstairs, I transferred everything to short boxes. It's just I was getting to an age where it was just too much
Yeah.
to carry up and downstairs a long
Yep.
box. Um, so the short boxes primarily. Now I have, if I find a printed box that I like and I
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, for my Superman
Mm-hmm.
type comics, it's a Superman theme. I'll try to put them in those kind. I even found at a show one time at a con a Doctor Fate box, and I put all of my Doctor Fate comics in it. And recently, I went to these, and the company doesn't make them anymore. So, and there's another company, but they're not as good. But they're basically fabric. They unfold
Yep.
and they're
Mm-hmm.
fabric and they look really nice. I like that they have a lid, but when I try to get more, they quit making them. I got another kind that was black, and they folded over, or the flap went over, but long ways. So it's like you can't lift up from the front. You have to flip it over from the side, and
Okay.
it's kind of cheap. I had one of the sewed on handles pop loose, so I won't get any more of
Okay.
those. But and then lastly, I don't know if you, I know you have some graded books on the front of your, uh, on your stand over there, but
Mm-hmm.
I, for some of my golden, well, not golden, but Holy Grail books, I have on my wall in those showcase, those
Mm-hmm.
ultraviolet screening,
Yeah.
protected, so that I can actually put them on the wall. So
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah.
3, 6, 7, 8 of those on the wall. Everything from
Okay.
the first Justice League and the first Legion of Superheroes to
Mm-hmm.
the first, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and first Supergirl, whatever. Yeah,
Well,
those
this
are,
made me think. So the boxes like that I do use now for going to shows, I'm still using long boxes.
yeah.
So even though they're heavier, that's fine. But Gemini, who is well known for their mailers, they make long boxes. Now these things are not cheap. They're like 15 to 20 bucks for these long boxes.
Mm,
But they got the triple walls on the handle sides,
yeah.
and they are also a little extra on the width so that I can actually fit in to the box my Light 2 Silver slash Golden Age bags
Oh,
that will
nice.
not fit into a standard long box
Yeah,
that only have like the double walls on the side. So
gotcha.
like people get mad at me. Well, not mad, but when I explain it, it's like people will say, "Hey, well, how much for a long box?" And it's like, "Well, I tell them, well, that depends on if you want the actual box or not.
Yeah.
If you take them out of the box, it'll be X dollars. If you want them with the
Oh, right.
box,
Yeah.
tack
Right.
another 15 on it because as soon
Yeah.
if you take that box, I got to buy another one and it's going to cost me
Yeah.
15, 20 bucks.
That makes sense.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so now I did that because for a while there I was having to put all of my books into magazine boxes because of the extra size on the My Light 2s that whenever I would take them to shows.
Hmm.
So now, fortunately, with the Geminis, I don't have to do that any longer. So it's actually, even though it's wider than a normal box, it's saving me space because it's not as wide as a magazine box. So
Sure.
I only have magazines in the magazine boxes. Now, one thing that I despise, you've seen those BCW plastic boxes?
Yes.
Those are terrible. And I know people who love those things. And
They're
those
like
are
milk crate type plastic.
well, yeah, and
Yeah.
then they snap together,
Yeah. Right.
but they're fine if you're going to set them someplace and never touch them. They stack, but you bump those just wrong and the entire it just comes apart,
Oh my God.
and yeah, they are I despise those.
Yeah. I
So, and it's
couldn't. Yeah.
funny, I got a bunch of them in a collection, and this guy I pulled them all out and put them up for sale. This guy bought every single one of them off of me, and then I was at a show in April, and he brought me over a box of comics to see if I would buy them, and he had them in one of these BC crates. He says, "Yeah, you're right. Those things are terrible." But
Do
he
you,
wanted them because they were getting stored in a garage, so that way he could stack them and take
sure.
up less room. But if you move them, man, they are
I'd say
awesome. So
invest in some plastic shelving from Lowe's or something, or Home Depot that's pretty sturdy.
yeah,
Don't you'll spend not much more and be better off. Probably a lot less actually. So,
so
man, what was I gonna say? Oh, one fear I always had was, fire and water. They're the enemies of comic
Hmm.
collections,
Yep.
and I have always had my comics in the basement. It's a finished basement. It's
Yeah.
climate controlled, so it doesn't get humid or damp or anything. But I always worry about a pipe leak,
Yep.
and I always thought, I wish they had either boxes or that you could actually seal to keep
Hmm.
water from getting into the box, or something you zipped around it. It would look like heck, but I just thought it's an untapped uh,
Yeah.
market for that maybe. But
Yeah. I think if you have a good bag and it's sealed, even if it's water goes across the top of it, it should not. Now, humidity, different
sure,
story. But the
or
water,
submersion, different
it's
story.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But the water itself should not necessarily be a problem. But the humidity can obviously be a big issue. Um,
and I've always kept my. I don't put anything on the floor. It's always
yeah,
on
I try to
a
keep stuff at
yeah
least
elevated.
a
Yeah,
few inches
yeah,
off of the
yeah,
ground. So
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So all right. Well, for those of you who requested that we talk about our comic organization, you either are welcome or we're sorry that we spent so much time talking about that. But I think this is, I don't know, I thought that was fun to talk about. So, and it's nice to know like some things that you think or do or you might be weird. It's like, okay, everybody does it that way or something comparable to it. So, uh, do you got time for a CLZ Shake, Mike, or do we need to wrap this up?
Always time. Well, always
Always
time
time.
until it's not. We're
Until
gonna
there's not time.
yeah be
Okay,
grabbing
all
my wife
right.
for lunch here shortly, so we can do it.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna I got mine up here. Like I said, if I get ROM or Micronauts or Silver Surfer or Star Wars, I'm shaking again. So all right, so what do I get this time? Oh, okay. So I got, see if I can pop this up here. So I have The
Oh, it's one of your favorite
Expanse.
shows.
That's right. This is one of my favorite shows. So this was from Boom Studios. This was, I think, no, it wasn't the first comic book. There was a hardcover book. Um, this is actually based off of the Amazon series, not off of the actual books, which I am perfectly fine with because if you've heard me talk about The Expanse before, most of the time people say the books are better, but in the case of The Expanse, the TV show is better than the books.
Hmm.
This actually takes place during season 4 and 5. So this is issue number 1. This is actually the A cover. I think I have the B cover as well because I was trying to buy everything Expanse that I could. This came out in December of 2020. So this is a post COVID book. Um, let's see. Now the creators on it, written by Karina Bechko, artist Alejandro Aragon, cover artist W. Scott Forbes. But it's really just a story. I think it focuses on Bobby Draper and Christian Avasarala. I butchered her name. She was kind of like the big political Earth political person.
Oh,
So it's. I thought it was a good continuation of the Amazon series. So it takes place between seasons 4 and 5 of the Amazon series. So if you're a fan of the TV show, I think it's worth reading. There's it's a hardcover anthology. It's got stories about most of the main characters, kind of like some, not really origin stories, but some stories before they get on the Rocinante. That would be that's good as well. So, but yeah, this was a good one. This one will probably indefinitely stay in my collection. So,
oh, cool. Well, it's funny we talked about Justice League because there's always a good chance that it'll be a Justice League comic that comes up
yep,
in a CLZ Shake. What I have is JLA number 75. This is the JLA
Grant
volume
Morrison
that
part
was
of
Grant
that's the
Morrison.
Morrison started. Is he still on it on the issue that
No,
issue?
by this
Okay,
issue,
yeah,
but he was gone probably
long
by
gone.
30 something. Uh, but Joe Kelly was the writer, and it still was a good um, a, a good run or a good all the way through that run was really pretty good. Joe Kelly, Doug, I always get this wrong, Monk or Monkey. He was really big in the early to mid 2000s. You've seen a lot of them.
Hmm.
And it's basically part 7 of the Obsidian Age storyline, which was it had to do with Aquaman being thrown back in time, I believe. So yeah, we had some guest characters like Tempest, which is Aqualad, and Major Disaster was he's one of those anti-heroes at the time. You know, he couldn't decide whether he'd be a villain or a hero, and yeah, so yeah, again, it was bought it off the rack or bought it not off the rack literally, but I either got it. I probably got it from Dennis or Mike.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, Mike, if somebody wanted to reach out to us, or you, or me, or both of us, besides podcasts at birdcomics.com, how might they reach you?
Well, before I say that, I will say the
Oh,
next episode is
yes.
236, and we are going to do pre-orders. We'll cover the next phase in panels catalogs.
Yeah. And then
And
when they reach out to you to ask you, what they want to ask you about that pre-orders episode.
yeah, they can reach me at Mike at Comic Shop Roadshow or on the Campus Comics Facebook page.
And I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at burgcomics.com, burgcomics.com, with links to my social media and eBay store. And we'll be back soon with pre-orders.
Me. You good to go? Good to go. Yep. Okay, sound recorder still recording. Oh, I haven't started Zoom yet, so I should start that recording as well, so we just have a backup. I'm glad you muted that. What? I'm glad you muted that. I did. Did you hear it? I know. No. Oh, you just see me? Yeah, I can tell. It's like, I thought something was going to come out of you. Ah, mornings are rough.